will start. Yes, hi everyone. Well, in the end, we have quite a few people here. Others are going to be watching the recording. And let me not talk too much anymore, otherwise Sandro will not have enough time. Let me give the floor to Sandro, and I will try to also give you the rights to share your screen. Yeah, just did this in case you want to use the presentation. And we're going to be talking about one of the most intriguing topics in the world of startups, funding. Yes, Sandro.
Okay, so hello everyone. Are you able to see my screen right now?
Yes, we can see it. Yes.
Good, good. So, well, good afternoon, good morning, good night. I know that there are people from everywhere, so hello everyone. So the idea for today is to be a very practical chat. It's going to be more of a chat. The idea that they're going to introduce some principles, and then we can have some Q&A in the end and take some questions from you. But is really here, the objective is to be as practical as possible and help you to give some ideas how to create a pitch deck for your businesses. So just before we get started, a little bit about myself. I'm Brazilian. I am natural from Rio de Janeiro, but right now I live in Malta. I had more than 25 years of experience as executive. The last 12 were in companies that were invested by private equity funds like Carlyle and Pátria Blackstone in Brazil. I'm also angel investor and board member in 3 startups, 2 of them in Brazil and one is in Miami. My academic background, I'm now a PhD student at the University of Malta. I had an MBA from MIT, and I had a BA in Business Administration from the University of Rio de Janeiro. In my personal interests, I like exercising, I love old movies, and I'm a compulsive reader, so that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Okay, so let's start with the topics. So for today, the idea is to take a little bit about the fundraising to give you an overview, a perspective. After that, we really got, the hands dirty and talk a little bit about how to build a pitch deck. And in the end, we'll have a Q&A. So at this point, you probably have started or you want to start a business or you develop an idea of a new product or service, or you enter a market successfully and you want to, just want to build in the momentum that your business is having, or you decided to expand your business more aggressively. Anyway, in any of those alternatives, you need money. That's what you need at this point. And how can you do that? So when you are an early stage company, some of the source of early stage funding, just a second, I can't see you. Okay. Violeta, you think how can I present and
yeah, unfortunately, no one in the 2 years of pandemic decided that would be a good idea to make this.
Okay.
But if there are some questions coming in the chat, I will be sure to let you know.
Good.
But yeah, just unfortunately, yeah, you have to talk looking at the screen.
Don't worry. Let's do that. So some sources of early stage funding. First of all, you can go for a non-equity. So here you have all the loans. You can just get a loan. In a bank, it's very hard. I know that in some countries they even give it to startups, but usually it's very hard. Or you also have the development agency grants or loans. You can have simply a grant. A lot of countries have those schemes, and or some countries have some loans. That they support small and medium enterprise. So you can also try to apply for those. And if you look for equity, you can have informal equity that can be your own funds. You can have some savings and you can start your company. You also can have family and friends or a business angel that at this point usually is someone that is close to you. Or again, for instance, in the US, you have a pretty active market of business angels. People that they do that, they are looking for opportunities, so you have that. But usually most places you do that also with close people. And you have more formal equity. In this case, you can look for, again, business angels, some of those more structured ones that I mentioned that in the US are very common, also some individual investors, some wealthy people that want to invest in early stage companies, or you can also go for venture capitalists or even strategic investors. Some companies, some big companies, they set up areas that work more like VC funds, and they try to feed small initiatives that can be incorporated to their business in the future. So you have a lot of that in some big companies right now. So if you are going for a more formal way of equity, basically you need a pitch deck. Okay, so I think that that's one very. I think that this is pretty much, I would say, a good summary. And of course, you can go much deeper than that. But at this point, I think that this is pretty much the basic that you need to know about about uh, uh, early stage funding. So let's move ahead and start talking about pitch deck itself. Okay, so a pitch deck is basically a short presentation, no more than 15 slides, to introduce you to your business to a potential source of funding. So here you can use it to present to family and friends, angel investors, venture capitalists, or even private equity if it's a bigger business. So one important thing about the pitch deck is to understand what the investors want. They are basically looking for opportunities to put their money in business that have high growth prospects, and also, but basically with very favorable asymmetries of return versus risk. This is very important, okay? Because sometimes you can see that, oh, this is gonna grow by 10 times, but it's so risky that's not worth for them. So it's much more of a relationship between risk and return that only the size of the ticket. The other thing is that very important to have in mind, investors, they usually don't invest in business plan. They invest in great people that are working, of course, on high potential business or high potential markets. But they primarily, they invest in great people. That's the basic thing that they look for. And the last thing is that well-grounded ambition is appreciated by investors. What I mean by that is try to avoid that speech of, okay, this market is so big, but so big that even if I have 0.1% of it, it's going to be a good business. That's not the kind of thing that people want to see. They want to see really ambitious people say, okay, this is a small market, but I'm going to be the best. I'm going to beat the competition. I'm going to be the number one in this market. This is the kind of thing that they want to hear. So I found a way to see you. So uh, so basically that's been pretty much what's the pitch deck. One thing that's also important for you guys to bear in mind is that a pitch deck is a sort of it's a subproduct of the business plan. That's probably something that some of you can be heard about it, probably have heard about it. A business plan is a more complete deck with all the things that you need to manage your business, all the milestones, financial plan. A pitch deck is like that, but is a more reduced version. It's a sales and marketing piece, I would say. So you pick all your plan, all that you envision for your company, and you transform it in a sales pitch, in a sales and marketing pitch for your business. So it's basically is more a technical sales thing. The key contents of a pitch deck. Usually you start by a cover, you describe the problem and the opportunity, and so you talk about the solution. You talk a little bit about the product, and also after the business model. You show the market opportunity, you talk about the competition analysis, the go-to-market, you present your team, you talk about the milestone schedule, you talk about money, and finally you ask for money. So I will go through all of those, don't worry, okay? I'm going step by step here because I think that this is, especially for someone that doesn't have a financial or business background, this can be a bit confusing. So let's go step by step. So starting by the cover. So the cover for me is very important. It's simple, but I think it's the 10 seconds that you have to convince those people to listen to you. So usually you put your company name, you put a sort of a declarative sentence. For instance, Uber, when they presented the pitch deck, was the next generation of car service, or Airbnb was book your room with locals rather than hotels. So here you choose a punch phrase, what your business is about. It's very important because this is what is going to catch the attention of your investor or your potential investor or not. Okay, so it really should be a very aspiring thing here. And you, of course, you put your details, your name, your title in the company, your contacts, because of course you want to be contacted later on. If everything goes right, you want this investor to invest your business. For that, he needs to contact you after that. So this is basically the cover. After that, you usually start presenting the problem and the opportunity. Here's a brief description of the problem or that your product or solution try to solve, and why is it relevant. And so here, there's another thing that's very important for you to also always have in mind, is that it's not about selling your product, it's about helping someone to solve a problem. So it doesn't matter that you have a wonderful thing if it doesn't help anyone. So it doesn't matter that your idea seems to be wonderful and genius, but if it's not a relevant problem for someone else, no one is going to pay for it. So here's where you show that there is a problem, and you found a way to, you start to describing that there is a problem, and this problem can be an opportunity because it is relevant for people. So here you describe who is your target customer, what are the solutions that those customers currently have for their problems, and also what are the pain points, the frustrations that they find with the offer that they currently have to solve this problem. After that, you go to the solution of the problem. Here is what I call, when you talk about the underlying magic, or why your solution is so unique. So here it's a very important part of the deck, because here is where you're gonna talk about your value proposition and why you are so different. So it's here you have to list the unique benefits of what you're going to propose compared to what you have existing offer. And of course, if your product is already out in the street, you should bring some case examples here. So you should show, okay, we are already serving this kind of customer with my solution. So you bring real life examples. It's very important here. But even if you don't have it, you should show here very clearly why your product, your service is so unique compared to the others. After that, you describe a little bit more about your product. Here you should show it in a very tangible way. Of course, if you're talking about technology, a prototype is always the best way to do it. But if you're not in the technological world and there's no prototype, if you just can describe it very simply and visually in no more than 3 steps, showing the functionalities, the features that you have, and the design. So for instance, in the lecture that I gave about this, one person had an idea that was a retail store. And of course, the functionality was, it's going to be a convenience store, the features. We are going to have a better level of service, a smart disposition of the shelves, and the design of the store is going to be with light colors and something like that. So it's applicable even if it's not a technological thing. So, but you should keep it very simple and be very sharp here to show to show in a very tangible way what's the product that's going to come to life if you don't have it already. After that, you go to the business model. So here in this session, you explain how you're going to profit for your product or service. So basically, in a nutshell, here is like you should say who's going to pay and for what. So you should say, for example, we'll charge a monthly subscription to have access to premium functionalities in case of an app, or we will have a 5% fee discounted from all vendors that the transactions are made in our platform, or something like that. Or if it's a retail, okay, we're gonna buy it and I'm gonna put a markup of 20 or 25% or whatever, or even put a markup on that. So here is basically how we're gonna make money. And one thing that especially for online businesses, one thing that I always try to say is if you can avoid the advertisement trap whenever possible, because investors, they get very suspicious with people that they just want to generate a lot of content for free, but you're going to make a lot of money with advertisement. They see that all the time. So if you can avoid it, if in the future you have advertisement sales, very good, but avoid having that as an end as much as you can. Of course, for some businesses, they are focused on that. You cannot run away from it, but if you can, avoid it, please. So here, after you discuss your business model, let's talk about the market opportunity. That is something that before we started, Violeta was discussing a little bit about it. And this is a very key part of it. Because remember what I told in the beginning, what the investors are looking for is basically, if you have to memorize one thing, invest in bright people, in nice relationship between return and risk. So this part is going to be about the return, the expected return. So here is the potential of money that can be made when you mature your position that in the market that you choose. So you usually started with what we call the total addressable market. So here is all the potential customers. For example, oh, my product is going to be for all the Maltese and tourists in the between 20 and 25 years age group. So this is my target, the total of people that I can address with this product. And so after that, you filter what we call the serviceable available market. So this was a specific example that I had in this class, that the guy wanted to have a shop that would be in this Lima area, that one area here in Malta. So basically, from the total addressable market, the serviceable area is going to be Maltese or tourists between 20 and 25 years, but living or visiting this Lima area only. So this is a part of the total addressable market. And lastly, what's the share of the market that is your aspiration in this serviceable available market? So for example, in year 3, I wanted to have a 25% market share. And here, the tip that I give is, the advice is, be reasonably optimistic, okay? You should be optimistic, but not exaggerated. So this is a very important part, because this is where your investors are going to see what the kind of return that they can aim if they invest in your business. After that, you talk a little bit about the competitive landscape. So you should list the 3 or 4 main existing competitor. And here, a very important thing to remember is that sometimes, and this is very common with entrepreneurs, you know, your idea is your baby in some sort of way. So our baby is all unique. So we have this tendency to think that what we have is unique. So one thing that I heard for a lot of competitors is, for a lot of entrepreneurs is, okay, but my product doesn't have competitors. Look, if you don't have competitors, probably you don't have a product. Because remember what I told in the beginning, it's not about your product, it's about solving a problem of your customer. So if the customer has a problem, they are solving it in some sort of way. Those are your competitors today, even if it's not directly related to your product. So you should list the 3 or 4 companies or products that are solving the problems of your customers today. You should describe their offer and their strategy in a very brief way. Remember, all that I'm showing here is 1 slide per subject. It shouldn't be more than that. But the most important thing here is, in the end, you should have a way to articulate why your solution is better than theirs. So that's an important part of here. It doesn't need necessarily to be in the slide, but you should know how to answer this question, because it's going to come. The other part is what you call the go-to-market. So here is how you're going to acquire and retain your customers, of course, profitably. And here, profitably is as much important as the rest of the sentence, maybe even more important, because just giving money away and investing in marketing, this is not what your investor wants to hear. So a way to do it profitably is very important. So one way that I like to address this is starting by, you choose you pick what I call a beachhead market. That's going to be your first step. It can be a geography, a micro segment. In the example that I brought before was the Sliema area in Malta. Or you can start by, if your product is for people of a certain age, you can start by just the ones that are in the university. You know how to see it, but it's important that you start by a micro area. You segment it and you start a little less ambitious. But you can show to your investor, your potential investor, that you're going to start by owning a certain segment, and after that you show your growth strategy for the next waves when you're going to expand your market behind the beachhead market. And here, if your products are already on the street, you're already selling, it's very interesting to use this part to show traction, or at least a proof of how customers love your solution, and most important, that they pay for it already. So if you show that there is already people paying for what you have to offer, that's great. And you can show it here. You can say this GTM that I'm proposing, it works because see what the customers are saying, see what Natalie, my customer, said, or something like that. This is very good to bring it here. So here is one of my favorite parts. Again, remember the three things I said in the beginning. Bright people in a nice risk and return relationship. Here we are talking about the bright people. So here you should show why you have the right team to make the opportunity into a reality, into a profitable and growing business. It's important here to show relevant experience for the business and very important, good mix of complementary profiles. And this is, believe it or not, where we see a lot of sometimes some entrepreneurs failing because, of course, it's natural that you like to work with our friends, with people that we enjoy spending time with, but many times those people, they are very much alike ourselves, so you don't generate too much complementary profiles. So if you're more a sales-oriented person, it's good to try to pick an engineer or, I don't know, a finance person. So you should think about having a leadership team that has the 2 or 3 or 4 core competencies that the business needs to grow. It's very important to have it here. So sometimes you don't have this naturally because you started the business with a friend of yours that's more, similar to you. But I urge you to try to find someone that has one skill or a set of skills that you identify that is important for the kind of business that you are proposing to do, but you don't have it on board already. And bring it to the leadership team. That's going to be important for you, and it's going to give you a lot of credibility when you go to talk to your investor. And one of the so after you showed all these operational part, you go for the milestone schedule. So here you should just show what are the key events of your path to become a profitable and larger business. So typical examples of milestones. Oh, when I'm going to have my first sale, if you are just in the investing, prototyping, or designing phase, we expect to have our first sale within 3 months. Or in the case of an app or something like that, the go live. After that, when you expect to have the break even, that is when you expect to become profitable, or when you expect to enter a new market. So I started by this beachhead market only in my in the geography of my first store, in the neighborhood of my first store, but you expect to have a second store in this other neighborhood within 1 year or 1.5 years, whatever. But so you got the concept here. You put over time when you intend to reach the key milestones for your business to become a large business. That's the idea for this part. So after you showed how wonderful your business is and how bright is your team and how enticing the market that you want to be in and the milestone schedule, you talk about how much money you're going to do it, and here you should have a financial model. So basically, the rule of thumb is to show how much money you make with a 3 to 5 year forecast. It's advisable to have a 5-year forecast. And let me tell you something. Probably those numbers are going to be wrong. I know that this is a bit disappointing, but they'll be wrong. And the investors, they know that. But they are much more interested in the way that you articulate that, and also to try to identify the risks that, here is a very interesting part for them to see what are the risks, because when you put the numbers, they can see if you are being too much optimistic with the market or if there are costs that you are not considering. So they are much more interested in what's behind the numbers than the numbers themselves. So that's why I always try to advise people to have few lines, but very explicit assumptions. The assumptions are as much important or even sometimes more important than the numbers themselves. And also in this part, you provide a cap table with the current structure of shareholders. So if only the founders, you put it here, or if a person of your family already put some money, so because the investor, they want to know who is going to be or she's going to be associated with. So that's the part that you show this to her or him, okay? So lastly, after you showed all that, that this is a great business, you're going to make a lot of money, so you ask for money. So the last part, the last slide usually is the fundraising. That is the process of fundraising and how you intend to use the proceeds. So here, Basically, you lay out the type of deal that you are proposing and what are the next steps. So you show how much do you need and in exchange for what percentage of your company. And you also show an idea of how you intend to use that money, or use part in marketing to grow the business, part for product development, and part to hire more people, good people. And of course, just going back, this should be according to the financial model that you have. So those, of course, they should be aligned with each other. But so this is a very important part, and usually it's the last slide, because at this point that you're going to discuss, okay, what is your interest? So you start talking about this in this part. But usually this is how a pitch deck ends. Usually this is the last slide. So before we go to the Q&A, there is one thing more that I would like to talk to you, that is the elevator pitch, that I think is also important, and is something that a lot of people, they overlook it, or they improvise it, which is even worse than overlook, in my opinion. Is a 30-second introduction of your company or idea. So basically, what is the elevator pitch? Imagine that you are, if you are really into making your business happen and making your business a reality, you should believe in that, and who had already, experienced that know what I'm talking about. You live that all, every minute of your life, you are thinking about that. And sometimes opportunity to meet someone that could be a potential investor, or even to introduce you to a potential investor, it comes when we're not expecting. When you are in an elevator, that's why the name elevator speech, or in the middle of a conference, or even in a cafe, you never know. But the point is, you must be prepared to cause a very good first and fast impression, to get a meeting, to present properly your pitch deck. So that's the idea of the elevator pitch. The key objective of the elevator pitch is to drive curiosity and create an opportunity for a second meeting. Remember, this is not the meeting itself. If you meet this person in a cafe, you don't want to bore her or him, for 30 minutes talking about your business. So it has to be very concise. That's why you should use sharp language, avoid jargons and buzzwords, because you always think that you have no more than 30 seconds. So you should be as sharp as possible. And here, prepare and rehearse. I know that it's very tempting to think that I created this business, so I know it by heart. Okay. But one thing is to know your business. The other thing is presenting your business. And the other thing is to present it in 30 seconds. So I strongly advise, always have an elevator pitch prepared, because when you never know when I'm gonna need it, but you will regret a lot if you need it and you haven't prepared it before. So really rehearse. How you do it? What are the main components? So usually it's an introduction, that is a sentence with your name and position. So an example here, my name is Sandro Sant'Anna and I'm founder of Solver Consulting. You say in a very brief description, one sentence again, what's your company mission or the idea? So here, in this case, I'm making up that our company helps Latin musicians who are struggling to thrive in the streaming world. And very important, one or two sentences to explain your differential. So here I could say, instead of art as a traditional music marketing people do, we use data. And we are very focused on Latin music, which is different from the usual shallow generalists in the industry. So here you are really putting what you made different from the others. And lastly, you have a final hook. That has to be one sentence only. And here I have some ideas of what could be a final hook. Can be an intriguing question. So have you asked yourself how these artists become so successful overnight? Data can tell you. So it's something that okay, I want to hear more about that. So that's what the last sentence is about. Or it can be a number. Of course, especially if you have a number that is unexpected. Like, that the music industry is expected to grow for 2 digits for the next 10 years. So that is something that could call the person's attention, or even a case of something that you have already done and had surprising results. But you got the idea is to have something that calls the attention of the person that you are talking to, and she or he wants to have another business or to introduce you to the person that you want. So this is basically what you should pack into a 30 seconds speech. So some final remarks before you go to the Q&A. First of all, when you're thinking about pitch deck and prepare your business, be attentive to details and rehearse to exhaustion. The pitch deck must be rehearsed. No matter how much you know your business, he hears and be prepared. Always try to start by telling a story, and preferably your story. It will hook the attention of your attention much more easily than if you start by boring things. People like to hear stories, especially when it comes from the heart. Which comes to the next subject, that is, try to work on a subject that you are really passionate about, but never fake it. So if you found a great opportunity in whatever it is, in, I don't know, in buying and selling, I don't know, just small bubbles or small pieces of glass, whatever it is, if you are not really passionate, but you just understand that it's a good opportunity to make money, be honest and talk. No, this I think is a great opportunity of business, but never try to fake a feeling, oh, I'm passionate about glass right now, if you're not, because this is going to look very bad for you. So this is something that I really think that is good working with passion, but never fake it. It's better to say I don't know than to say something that's wrong or that is even false. So don't make things up, and be humble and say, okay, I don't know, but in another opportunity I'll bring an answer. Be very open and honest about it. A paying customer give you much more points than a great idea that's only on paper. So if you're already selling, bring this. This is much better than an excellent idea, but no one pays for it yet. So that's something to bear in mind. Remember, when you engage a partner or an investor, you are automatically accepting a boss. So I know that a lot of entrepreneurs, one of the idea that fascinates them is the idea of being the masters of their own destiny, and don't have and not having a boss. But when you look for an investor, forget about it. You have to share. You in practice have a boss. So accept it, and it's not a bad thing actually. It's good to keep you in control. But the most important thing, accept it. And lastly, always remember, this is from Colin Powell, the late General Colin Powell. Plans don't accomplish anything. Endeavors succeed or fail because of the people involved. So always try to get involved with the best people that you can. Try to hire and try to treat those people well, because good people bring more good people, and you need those. And also this serve for investors. Don't go just for the money. Make sure that you are getting money from nice and good people that are going to be constructive and help you in building your endeavors. So this is very important. People is the key for everything. Without people, it doesn't matter that your idea is brilliant. If you don't have the right set of people as your partners, employees, and even investors, you're not going to go anywhere. So this is basically it. So the idea here is now is to have some Q&A, and after that, if we can also go through some examples of pitch decks from companies that you probably know. But let's start with some questions before.
Okay, thank you, Sandro. If someone wants to ask a question in your menu, yep, someone already figured out, you can raise your hand, and then there's going to be a queue, and we're going to be letting you talk. So, Sarangi, you're the first one. You're going to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi, my name is Sarangi, and I have two questions about fundraising. So the first is, at what stage does a startup have to think about fundraising? Because I have learned that it is good to start organically growing and then ask for funds once you would want to scale. So yeah, I just wanted to know the stage at which fundraising should be thought about.
Well, that's a very good question, because I think that's the common doubt, for every entrepreneur. So the first thing is, it's good for you at some point. I know that sometimes entrepreneurship, you just start doing things, but at some point it's important to plan. So that's for me is the most important thing. And you have to sit down and you have to make a business plan. You don't need to do something very fancy, but you need to project what you intend to do and what time, and you see which kind of resources you need. And that is going to give you an answer. When you see that you are running out of funds, before that, you should go for fundraising. So that's when your business asks you for money. The other way to think about it is how ready is your business. So sometimes your business is generating money, is generating good funds. You don't need it, so it's not going to be the first case that I just said, but you have a business that is growing so fast and that's doing so well that you believe that if you start doing something else, you could, grow by, it's doing well, but you can do 3-5 times more. So that's definitely is an indicative that you probably should go for looking for an investor and should look for fundraising. So basically, but I think that it's but again, this goes a little bit of planning on that, because you should look for, I can grab this other opportunity and I'll need money for that. So what I tell you is that and I strongly advise you to plan. Here it was more focused on fundraising, but usually this lecture I usually get I do it in 2 lectures. So the other one is business planning, and business planning is what's gonna give this answer to you. But it don't have to be, as I told you, it doesn't have to be a fancy business plan with 100 lines in Excel. But you need to do it to minimally get you organized, and you see, okay, I can grow more if I have more money. I need to hire more people if I want to. So those are the clear signs that you need to go for a fundraising. And remember, a fundraising process, unless it's really little money and you can get it more informally with friends and family. But otherwise, if you need for a more formal process, you have to think at least 6 months in advance. But usually those processes, they can take even up to 12 months, depending on the amount of money and also the market. If the market has a crunch of liquidity, it can take more, it can take longer. When the market is easier, it takes less. So I advise you to at least 6 months before that you see that you're going to need the resource, you start planning you start doing the fundraising.
Yeah, thank you. And the second question is that, yeah, people say that when we start like pitching it to investors, it's more data driven discussions that they look for, more like money driven and data driven. And right now at the beginning, I have problem with figuring out the data, like the market size and the value that I could make, like capture out of that market, because I don't have an actual product. So how do I come with those figures at this stage when I'm like at the ideation phase?
Well, you have to split this into 2 different parts. One thing is all the planning that I was referring 1 minute ago. That is the planning of your business. The other thing is the pitch deck and the things that you have to do to approach an investor, potential investor. So when you're talking about pitch deck and approaching an investor, is more, remember what I said in the beginning, is more of a sales sort of material. It's more of a sales and market material. So you need numbers, but you don't need to be exact, especially if you don't have it. As I told you, you never fake it. You never bring something that's not true. So you bring the best that you have. So that's the first thing. What I can tell you is that, but of course, the more data that you can have to give backup to what you're bringing to the potential investor, the better. And but what I can tell you is that from my experience, if your idea is really good, what usually happens is that you have this more simplified sales material that is the pitch deck. Of course, if you're going to present it to an investor, they're going to challenge you and make tons of questions. You should be prepared to answer. So you should have some numbers to, at least minimally substantiate your answer. But of course, remember, this is a first step in a process that hopefully, if everything goes well, you have 2, 3, 4 more meetings with those people. And if your idea is really good and they are really enthusiastic about your product and especially about you and your team, they will be the ones helping you to build that. So I'm pretty sure with my experience with funds and the other investors, they have teams that those people, of course, they are not going to give you the answer, but they will help you to find the answer. So that's something that helps a lot. But the most important thing is to have minimal numbers to substantiate your answer and have a very good pitch deck with a very good idea. So that's what I might take on this one. I don't know if it was helpful.
Yeah. If they would help figure it out in a clearer way, then yeah, that would be quite useful. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds fine. Like my questions have been answered. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Well, I don't know if someone else wants to ask the question. Then, while we're waiting, I would like to say a few things. When Sandra was talking about the non-equity kind of funding, just to remind everyone, especially those who are from Malta and the Netherlands, because these are the two countries that we have the modules for now. If you go through Skill Lab, you will find modules on Malta and the Netherlands. And there we discuss these kind of things as well. There are grant opportunities in both of these countries that you can start with. And this is, of course, ideal for the early stage, that you apply for what's called free money, right? When you don't give part of your company away, and to get you started and probably do all these things that Sarangi was talking about, like figure out the markets and maybe even get some test users so that she's ready to actually approach investors. So far, yeah, sure.
Just one comment on the grants, Violeta, because I think that it's important, because I was in a meeting here in Malta I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, not sure, with some entrepreneurs, and a lot of them, they revealed a lot of frustration with the grants, with the granting schemes. And one thing that's important for you to bear in mind is that it's not because it's granting and it's from government that it's easy. Those are separate things. So don't think that it's easier. Actually, going to the back to the last question, in terms of the numbers and these kinds of things, it may be even worse than investors, because remember, you have government money that is our money, taxpayers' money, that you have an employee that has to grant it to someone else. So they need much more paperwork and proof that they're not just giving money to their friends or something like that. So at some point, sometimes this is going to be a much harder process at some, depending on the idea or the kind of investor that you have access to, than an investor that is the manager or sometimes even the owner of the money, that just can say, okay, I got your idea, I think you're bright, I'll give you some money, I'll grant you some money. So don't make this mistake of just because it's a government money, it's going to be easier. It's because the type of documentation and numbers that they need, sometimes it's even worse than investors. So I think it's good just to have this clarification. Okay,
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
we have this.
Yes, just to add on that, and then Daisy, I will let you ask the question. I absolutely agree with you. I just wanted to add that I think we had a few people making comments that there is too much written material in the platform, and that made me smile a little bit, because wait till you guys start reading the conditions for funding and actually writing those funding applications. Calls from European Commission, it's easily 60 pages of unreadable material in very bureaucratic language that you have to go through. So practice reading while you can. But Malta is, of course, a bit more complicated with bureaucracy. In the Netherlands, there are some of the grants that are quite easy, and one of them is called Meet Feasibility, where you can get up to 20,000 to do your proof of principle. Absolutely zero administration involved. I couldn't believe it myself, but basically they thought that it's easier to just not ask for any proof back, because then they probably don't have to hire extra employees. So these things happen as well sometimes. Yep, Daisy?
Hi, I was just thinking while you were explaining the well, I'm Maltese and living in Malta, first of all. I was thinking while you were explaining now, the government grants, yes, I know there are a lot of papers before applications, and sometimes you have to use your own funds or get guarantees, and then they will give you the grants. And with the bank as well, it is hard to get the loans. But then my thought was, if you have an investor, you're kind of tied for life. But with the government and the bank, with the government, you just have a lot to give in material. And with the bank, once you pay it back, you're free. So would that come into the question if choosing between grants and investors?
Well, well, first of all, I think it's a very this is very personal. I think it depends on the entrepreneurs, you know, because what if usually governments, I think Violeta just brought an exception in Netherlands, but usually it's very bureaucratic. So it's the process to get the money tends to be harder. But once you get it, it's a sort of more, it's a money with much less or even with non-strings attached, you know? So it's a money, it's a grant, you use it, so it's good. And in a bank, you have to pay it, and if things go sour, you give sometimes you give some personal things as guarantee, so you'll be more trouble. But it usually a bit less bureaucratic than the government. There is also the other thing that is the size of the grant versus how much money do you need. So sometimes you need more money than the maximum in a grant, so you have to go to the bank anyway. So I think that's pretty much, there is not a right or wrong answer. But of course, if you have the patience and the organization to go through the government grants, and it is an amount that is enough for you, I would say that is a little better than a bank because of the strings that come attached with the money. But you have all this involved: how much money you need, how much patience and organization you have, and all this stuff. So sometimes you're already customer of the bank, depending on and you have already a relationship with the bank, and so that can be easier. So it depends. But if everything is equal, government is a little better because of the strings attached to the money. That's what I would say.
Actually, I was seeing more of a difference between the government and the bank compared to the investor, not the government compared to the bank. Because the investor, you can never, I don't think you can buy them out, no? Once they're in, right?
Not well. It depends. So that's a very good question. So okay, I think that grants and banks we already talked, but so now I talk about, so one thing is if you're talking about non-equity, banks and grants, we already explained that. So now we're talking about equity and non-equity. The big difference are two, of course, as I told you in the final of my presentation. In the equity deal, it doesn't matter the size, you have a boss, because a partner who has a partner, whoever had a partner in life, know that you have a boss. It doesn't matter, you have a boss when you have a partner, because you need to give disclosure, you owe here or her something that you should, give, a feedback on requests. So you have a boss, which can be seen as a bad thing. But on the other hand, remember, this was not my last sentence, the last one. If you are involved with the right person, so if you find the right investor, the right partner, I think is way better than banks or government or whatever, because the right partner, they help you to build the business. They bring their expertise. They bring people that they know. They bring their network, and more important, they are your partners. So your success is their success. So they will be very interested. The government, the person in the government, they don't care if you fail or whatever. They don't care. For them it doesn't matter. For an investor, if you fail, it's her or his money. So he or she cares a lot. They want to make you succeed. So depending, again, as I told you, there are some people that they just don't want to have a boss. So in this case, the investor cannot be a good thing. But if you ask me, I think that if you choose the right investor, is much better. You have a person that is aligned with you, the interests are aligned, and that can bring, network, knowledge, expertise, more money in the future. So for me, is a no-brainer having the right investor.
Yeah, it's still a risk, because as you just said, the investor would want a good return on his investment, and if there might be some time that the investor would, being your boss, try to change your project idea to get the most profits. So then kind of, it's not good to have a boss then, with all
Yeah.
the pros.
As I told you, I think everybody had good bosses and bad bosses in life. Working for a good boss it can be a thrilling and inspiring experience. So I think it's pretty much the same here. But you're right. If you have a bad investor, it's really worse.
Absolutely. We have this misconception that, people become entrepreneurs because they want to have this freedom, and then they're like, so I have to give my freedom away when I get an investor. Yeah, unfortunately that happens, and we actually did something little in the game to demonstrate that. So once you guys as teams get investors, you will see that the team leader is going to lose a bit of control, just to demonstrate how that happens in real life. Yes.
That's exactly it.
Yep. Yeah. Of course. Choosing an investor, choosing a team member is exactly the same as like choosing, a partner, husband or wife, whatever. You might, choose wisely and be lucky and spend the rest of your life together. You might want to get divorced and kill each other after a year. Yeah, these situations happen. That's why, once again, we highlight all the time, whenever possible, make sure that you have all the legal paperwork in place. Make sure that when you find team members, it's the shareholders agreement with the investors, you absolutely have to make sure that the paperwork that you sign with them, that you actually understand what is going to happen in case things go wrong. So don't only concentrate on when things go right, but also look for hey, what's going to happen if we fail, because that's always a possibility. I don't know if there are any more questions, but meanwhile I can say a few more things. Yeah, something that I absolutely always wanted to ask, and of course never could, but now that I'm the boss here, then I can. So as you know, Sandro, this is the game for women, right? For female entrepreneurs. And we're hearing from everywhere, including the data, research, and different use cases, that investors treat female entrepreneurs differently. But now I would like to ask you a question. So you, being the one who has to listen to the pitchers, have you actually noticed any difference between how women pitch projects and how men pitch projects? And maybe have you treated them differently, like subconsciously? Like, do you have any examples of that? And what can women do in case they're not doing something correctly? You never know. What can they do to maybe be better? So one example would be some women are not as confident as men would be in general, just talking in stereotypes here, but maybe like they need to be to practice how to become more confident, things like that.
Well, first talking about myself, the subconscious bias or something like that, I think in this part I'm not a good example, and I tell you why. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother, so basically I grew up only with female references, and they were always a synonym of strength for me. So for me it was, I never bought this thing of women being fragile or something like that, because that was not what I saw when I was a kid and when I was raised. So for me that was never like that. So and I never saw that. And I think that to complete that, when I started working in not the works that I had before, because I came from a very poor family, so I did a lot whatever I could do to get some money. But when I really started my career, my first boss, it was also a woman, and she was great to me. She was a mentor. So I think I had a different path that helped to forge me in a different way. And and I think that so just to and it was very subconscious. Actually, it was not made by design. What I was thinking when I was thinking about here, being a mentor here with the female switch, I was just remember the last company that I was in. That was when I really had total freedom to form a leadership team. It was myself, and I had 4 direct reports to me, for senior executives, for directors, and I had 2 men and 2 women. And it was not by design. I mean, it was not because I wanted to have half and half. It was not like that. It was just, it happened that the best salesperson that I met was a woman, and that I trust her. She had worked with me before, and she's a hell of a saleswoman. And there was no one better than her for the role. And so she was. The finance guy was a guy who was very good. I hired him. The other guy was very good with in the business development, had a lot of relationships. I brought him. And for the R&D, Silvia, that was this woman, she was a legend in Brazil, in her area. And I was actually very lucky to have her. So I wouldn't even think about having anyone else. So for me, it was very, very normal. What I see in general is that the things have been improving a lot in the last 10, 15 years, I would say. When I started dealing with private equity in 15 years ago, more or less, it was much more restricted. But again, the first invested company that I worked, I was very lucky because the head of the fund in the US was a woman, and she was the head of the board and stuff. So and she was very proud of it, and she made a push for having more diversity. So she brought that. But in general, in the pitch in the beginning, I saw that people they sometimes they usually, depending on the topic, they give more attention to men. But I think that has changed a lot, at least from my experience. That was more with those funds from the US and even in Brazil. For the last years, it's being equal. And I would say that for some areas, especially when it involves things like creativity and the organization, I would say that slightly has a little bias, a positive bias towards women today. That is very positive, I think. So definitely it was not like that. If someone tells that it was always like that, it's not true. But it has been changing, and it's much better now than it used to be. Much better. I think that today, if someone gives more credit to a man than a woman in any presentation, she or he is going to be making a fool of himself or herself, because everybody knows that actually there's no difference. So I don't know if that addressed what you asked, but
Yeah, you're too nice. Next time, girls, let's invite some sexist investor and get all the truth out of him. Sandro is too nice.
no, that's no. But it's changed. I know there's not that. Of course, there is horrible people out there for everything in the world. But I mean, as a majority, as a consensus, definitely things have changed. I mean, I see that not for myself, but what I see in the boardrooms, in the meetings that I go, it's very different from 10 years ago. It's very different.
Absolutely, yeah. And I tend to agree with you. I read these horror stories when horrible things happen to female founders, and I don't think I've ever. Well, there was one situation where it was not an investor, but it was obviously somewhat of a sexist, so I ended that relationship pretty quickly. But in general, I never have a problem with investors only talking to my male co-founders. Usually it's the opposite. I'm the one who's talking a lot, and I actually have to shut up to let the men talk. So yeah, it's I think it's how you position yourself. If you know that you deserve to be at the table and you have no doubt about that, then you behave in a way that is confident, and you give away that energy, and then no one doubts that. I think we have someone raising the hand. Sheila, if you unmute yourself, please, and ask the question.
Hi. I have a question about idea. You told us that we should explain that our idea solve a problem. Yeah. But sometimes the idea couldn't solve any problem. For example, the idea about fashion, gift, or something that people about artworks, they didn't solve any problem in the society. How we can convince an investor that our idea is important?
Well, I think that let's start. I think that let me just before us get started in the content of the answer, separating though in two words. One, let's separate between the profit and non-profit world. I think that this is the first thing. If you are doing a non-profit type of initiative, so the type of funding and the pitch deck that you're going to do is a little bit different of the one that I presented. You have to adapt some things because some of the things, they are a problem, but in a different way, and so you have to go in that way of the social problem or whatever you're addressing. In the second way, if it's a for-profit initiative, what I call a problem that you're going to try to solve, you can see another way to think about that is, why is someone going to pay for that? And that's the answer. That's the problem, what I call the problem. Why would someone be willing to pay for your product or service? And that's the sort of problem, you know, that's what I call the problem. So that's, I think, is the way that you should think to address this question.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is about target market. How we can know who is our target market before selling the product, you know?
Well, usually it's very useful, something that, as I told you, when you think about organizing your business, doing the business plan, that I told you, it doesn't need to be something fancy, 100 Excel lines, but you need to have some sort of plan. It's very useful. The other part that is important is do some market research. So it doesn't have to be, again, something fancy. Today it's so easy to do an online survey, monkey survey, to have all those surveys or Google forms. You do that, you use your Instagram or your Facebook or wherever, and you try to put as many people as you can to answer that. And you do the relevant questions for the type of product that you want to offer. And so with those answers, you can start seeing which kind of profile is more, you know, susceptible to your product. What should be your target audience? You see, oh, it seems like more women like my product, or more men, or more senior people. So you have a flavor of that, and you can start building with based on this first market research. But I strongly advise you, and that was a very good question that you brought, very important. I strongly advise you to do some market research before, you know, pitching, and even to organize yourselves before putting even your own money to do something. As much as you believe in your idea, do something before you put your money in it. Some marketing research.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And just to add on top of that, in the game, we also prioritize the marketing part of what you're doing. So figuring out who is going to be interested in what you're doing, who has the problem that you know, you can solve, and that you start with creating a bit of a community around yourself, and, you know, just talking about what you're doing, not even trying to sell anything at all, just, you know, discussing things and see you know, what kind of people respond, and then eventually by listening to what they say, you might have you know, a bit of the, you know, clue here and there as to what kind of direction you need to take. So, and yeah, these are easy things that you can do without you know, even quitting your job if you work, you know, let alone looking for funding. Something that is going to be one of the quests that you create a landing page where you basically you know, write what it is that you're doing, like you fill in the page as if you already have that. You don't have to have anything. You're testing. This is the test, and you connect you know, an email form, and you start collecting email addresses and see if anyone's actually responding. If someone you know, signing up, then hey, you have interest. This is how you test things. Create a profile on social media, you know, start following people from the area that you're working in, and try, you know, involving them, make valuable comments, and see once again if there's interest. So at the very early stage, you don't need to talk about the product at all. You're talking about you know, anything that's related to either the problem or like the gains that what you're doing can bring to people. So like either you're trying to solve the problem of negative emotions that they have, so the pain that they have, or you're doing something for them to have positive emotions. Are you bringing pleasure to them with your product? So you start from these little steps, and at the same time, of course, as Sandro said, you also do the more traditional way of when you Google and you like start looking for database things, and then hopefully they collide. At some point, you have to take the leap of faith and decide, hey, I think that this is going to be my beachhead market, as Sandro said. So something like the first group of people that you're starting with. You might be wrong. Like we were wrong, for example, with Female Switch. When we did the first pilot, we thought that we're going to start with women aged 18 to 25. And then eventually people who were older, including I think Benedict is here as well, they started knocking on our door and saying, hey, we also want in. And we realized that, hey, these are actually that group, women who are like, 35, to 45. They're also ideal because they are at a point when they want to switch their careers, or they want to go from being employed to doing something themselves, and they were so much more motivated with so much more motivation than in the younger ones, because the younger ones still think, my whole life is ahead of me, nowhere to hurry, I'm just gonna do it here and there. And then we thought, hey, but actually if you put those two different age groups together in one team, this is perfect. So going back to diversity, how wonderfully it works in making you come up with solutions that you would not have come up with if there were people from the same group everywhere. So the younger generation comes up with ways to test things like the older ones would not have come up with, because hey, we don't use TikTok or whatever, and they know how to go viral in like a week, right? So why not combine those things? So you can absolutely be wrong, but then you need to test quickly. And once you realize that you're wrong, you move on to the next group, and finally, eventually, hopefully, quickly enough, you find that ideal target audience that you start with. It doesn't have to be all the target audience that you eventually want to have. It has to be, as Sandro said, something very small. You have to put a group of people together who have the same interests, the same maybe hobbies, or the same very specific problem. So it's testing, it's trial and error, and it's following a specific process of quickly validating something, invalidating and moving on to the next thing, doing the same thing, iterating, changing. So it's constant. I always compare entrepreneurship to a Mario game, where if you stop moving, you're gonna get hit with something and you die, right? So you always have to move. Doesn't matter if you're making the right move, but moving is the best thing you can do. Hey, Vicky has a question. I can stop talking now.
Sorry, don't stop, continue.
No, I'm done. I was done. I was just filling in the silence. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just curious about so when you mentioned the share of market on your market opportunity slide, Sandro, then what would be the ways to try to predict our the share of the market in 3 years or I don't know how many years?
That can be the easiest or the trickiest part of all this stuff, because that's definitely a bit of gut feeling. But you use the market research that I mentioned before. Usually you bring something like that, because especially if your product is still not out in the street, it's very hard for you to try to guess or deduct something. So that's why the market research also comes along, because you start having a reference of we talked to 200 people, they answered our question, and I don't know how many thought that could be a good idea, how many would pay €3, and so basically you think that a good ambition could be based on that numbers. 25% would be our share, but usually when your product is not out in the streets, and especially if you don't have a competitor that is more similar to you, is market research. So that's one way to do it. The other way is if you are doing a product that is similar to something that is already on the street, and you can aim to have, okay, see if those people have this number of customers, we expect to get half of their customers when we are out there or something like that. So that would be another reference. Usually better if you can cross both, you know, if you have the market research and you also have a reference of someone that is already selling a similar product, not exactly the same, but similar, and you cross both to have to build your reference. So that's are usually the most used techniques for this part.
Thank you.
Anyone else has any hard questions for Sandro? Well, then, can I ask one more? A trick. Sandro, 3 most important qualities that any entrepreneur must possess. Go.
Well, I think that I think that the first that I like the most is optimism. I think that an entrepreneur has to be very optimistic because everything goes against her or him. You know, you have the market, you have competitors, you have a lot of naysayers that are surrounding you all the time. Sometimes you have even your family that thinks, why are you doing this? Why are you, why are you, quitting this job so wonderful and doing this crazy thing? So if you're not optimistic, but the good thing of optimism for me is that for me, optimism, what I call the perennial optimism, is it's a force multiplier. You start, if you get really optimistic, people around you, they start getting optimistic as well. So I think that this is, for me, is the first, because it's the beginning of everything. The other thing that I think that helps a lot, and that would be shocking for some people, is to being organized. And because a lot of people, they tend to see the entrepreneur as that genius, and that person that has everything in his mind. So the first thing that generates this wrong idea is that usually when people think about entrepreneurs, they think about people that are literally 1 in a billion. So they think of Steve Jobs and guys like that. That, come on, those guys are 10, 20, in the history of humanity, of humankind. And you have a lot of those entrepreneurs like us that are there just doing other things, the day-to-day, normal people, and with a lot of things that you have to do being an entrepreneur. Because remember, when you're an entrepreneur, you are the sales director, you are the finance, you are the HR, you are everything. So organization helps a lot. And if you are a person like myself that doesn't come naturally to you, I'm not naturally organized. So I start building tools, whatever I can read about organization, I do it, and I try to make a discipline of being organized because it's not natural to me. So I try to not start anything if I'm not organized first. So I put that as a discipline because it's not natural. So that would be my second thing. And the third thing, I think, would be absolutely paranoid in a good sense. And I think that because being paranoid is what's going to bring your attention to the details. That is sometimes is what makes the real difference, because you have a lot of smart people out there. You find your competitors, probably the leaders of them are also smart people as yourself. Sometimes they can be even smarter, but if they are not attentive to the details, and you are, that can really give you an edge in everything that you do. Even if you are having a pet shop and in a neighborhood, and you have another one, and you are more attentive to the details. And so, because when you are attentive to details, your customers, they feel that, it's sometimes it's a small treat that you give them when they come to your store or something like that, and people feel that. So being absolutely paranoid with your business and the small details, I think is one. I think it's a good set of qualities. but definitely the optimism and believe in yourself is for me is the number one by far.
Yeah, I kind of think unless you are bipolar, maybe you need more people in the team to fit all the all the qualities. Because yeah, I think a few of you have already done of course, the changer and runner test, and then you did the homework where you had to classify yourself as the 1 or the 2, which is basically a very similar idea. And usually CEOs tend to fall into the the 1 or the changer category, and those who are more organized, then they are the runners and the 2s. And of course, it's complicated to be all things at the same time. So that's why the power of the team, of course, comes where you don't only find people to join you who fit the the hard skills. So like if you are technical, you need marketing, but that's not only that, right? If you are a runner, then you absolutely need a changer so that you can you can be more of this multifaceted team that can have everything that Sandro says and beyond. But yeah, I think we're almost out of time. I mean, of course, I could go on, but we need to let Sandro go, I guess. So if no one has any more questions, then we can finish this. And we're going to have a session, the evening session with me as well. So if we want to continue talking about investment there, we can continue there, of course, without Sandro, just the girls. Well, no, we can bring the legal guy in so that we can have a bit of diversity there.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, Sandro, thanks so much. I think this
My pleasure.
session came at a very good time because a lot of the girls, they're kind of at the stage when they are writing their pitch deck. There's a lot to think about. We, of course, also gave them a template that they can play with, which is a bit more of a simplified version of what you said, just because it's a game. And we also wanted, of course, to make people who are just getting started not get lost with all these, fancy terms like GTM or cap table, because it's very scary if you've never heard them before. But the idea is basically the same, that, yeah, if you approach, if you have the right process, which is, hey, these are the slides, you need to fill in as much information as possible, then you can do that for any idea that you will come up with.
Great. It was my pleasure. And congratulations for the initiative. And you all, I think that this game is great. And I hope you had more and much more editions, because it's really something that the world needs, initiatives like that.
Thanks a lot. One thing that I almost forgot, Sandro over here also has some time to do one-on-ones. I think I already announced it on Instagram. And if you haven't heard them, if you go to the marketplace, then you can find Sandro's card there. Unfortunately, the amount of spots is very limited because Sandro is a busy guy. So if someone wants to have an hour with him, I don't think it's very expensive. I made him put a lower price on the market, not to make you all go bankrupt. So don't remember. I think it was what is it? 50 tokens? Don't remember.
Yep.
So go check it out and yeah, sign up, and then you can discuss your idea already in detail. Maybe even go through the presentation that Sandro had today, but put your ideas and your numbers and your problems there. Yeah, don't miss on this opportunity.
It's gonna be a pleasure. Bye bye. Good luck to all of you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Stop.